Well, how about the fact that the human body straight up sucks, and a person's final form that they evolve into is actually Larry King? How's it going, YouTube lovers? This is the EagleBuilder here. Welcome back to another video. Today, I'm doing another Eabs Book Club. That is right, we are finally doing another one of these. And today is really special because today I'm here to talk about the Book of Bill. Yeah, this is the biggest piece of Gravity Falls lore in years, and I'm really excited to talk about it today. It's much like Journal 3, which I also have, and I've read cover to cover many times. It is basically a canon in-universe book, unlike some of the other supplemental material that is released, such as, Lost Legends, which is a graphic novel telling more stories within the Gravity Falls world. This is supposed to be an in-universe book that exists. And then, unlike Journal 3, where, obviously was written by Ford, with notes from Dipper and a few of the other characters in there, this time, it's written by the One-Eyed Demon himself. Of course, Real World was written by Alex Hirsch, the creator of the show, but I am very excited to talk about this. And since I'm only talking about one book today, unlike, my FNAF book club video where I had a trilogy to talk about, I'm going to go section by section of this, basically divide it up to how the book is basically formatted, and talk about a little bit about what's in the book, kind of summarize it, and then also what my thoughts were as I was reading and how my thoughts on this book changed as I got to the end of it. So let's go ahead and get right into this madness, because there is a lot to talk about. I'm also, of course, going to start this video with a spoiler warning and an opinion warning. I am going to be talking about what is in this book and stuff that happens in the show, and I will be giving my opinions on it. So if you don't care for either of those things, feel free to click away, or come back later. Please come back later if you want to read the book first. I highly recommend checking it out. But let's go ahead, jump into this video. First, we need to get Bill back. Of course, at the end of Weirdmageddon, he was defeated, Stan punched him, memory gun erasure, left his body as a statue in the forest, he was gone. But then, we actually start this book with a couple pages from Ford, in the style of Journal 3, saying that he found this book, this actual book, in his knapsack one day. And at first he dismissed it as just a tasteless prank, the teenagers of Gravity Falls acting up. He was definitely thinking of Wendy's friends, if I had to be honest. Who else would he be thinking of? But then no matter how many times he tried to get rid of it, the book just kept coming back, and it even started to infect other books around it. So this is definitely the work of Bill. He leaves a warning asking anyone who picks up this book not to read further. But of course, we want that juicy lore, so we go ahead and turn the page immediately. And we are met with a very Bill thing, a summoning ritual. Very detailed and simple right off the bat. Put your hand on this page right here, clear your mind, and say, time to get weird. And what do you know? It works like a charm, and Bill literally bursts through the pages of this book. That is one thing I have to say is really cool about this book compared to, Journal 3, which is all the whole ink and parchment style kind of thing. This book is fully colored illustrations, and it really lets there be a lot more of Bill's wackiness and really interesting and disturbing at times artwork in it, which is just one of the strengths of this book, the way it has its storytelling. It's really cool. But of course, being the deal maker that he is, as soon as Bill is back, he wastes no time striking a deal with the new reader of the book, which is us. And after absorbing our blood into the book itself, Bill goes into further detail about what this book is, and it's even more messed up than we could have thought. Apparently, the book's spine is meant to be a real human spine, and the pages are pressed brain matter. I mean, good grief. At this point, I'm reading it going, okay, Alex Hirsch warned that this book was going to be a little darker and aim more towards the fans that grew up with Gravity Falls, who are all grown up now. But holy crap, man. I mean, we knew Bill was twisted and things, but this almost felt like it was going too far already. But, you know what? I waited this long for more Gravity Falls. I'm going to keep reading it. I want that lore. So, anyway, we've made our deal with Bill. Now it's time to continue and see what exactly he wants to tell us. We then begin a really weird and wacky journey into the mind of Bill Cipher, starting with him telling us about himself. What are his powers? I mean, obviously, mind control, like pyrokinesis, things like that. And he even starts to talk a little bit about what his weaknesses are, but then he stops himself, and he accuses us of tricking him into getting dirty secrets out of him. And then he says we're getting Gatsby'd, and the book becomes The Great Gatsby. I am serious, we literally start seeing actual pages from The Great Gatsby in here, and it is a really, honestly, hilarious joke. Bill gets bored and breaks through the pages saying that that's enough, but then we actually get back to the perspective of Ford writing to us. And he basically tells us, yeah, I get it, I'm also curious, but you didn't listen to me, you started reading the book, you need to stop now before Bill can get even further, get rid of the book and save yourself. Once again, though, we ain't going anywhere. We're going to keep reading this book. And so Bill cuts back in and instead promises that he'll be able to tell us the secrets of the universe. So after putting us through a couple of logic puzzle tests where the only way to pass the test is by ignoring it completely, according to Bill, but it does have a bunch of really funny jokes where most of the answers are literally just Bill, he decides to give us a brief look at a guide to everything. First off, he tells us that reality is an illusion and the universe is a hologram. I mean, okay, Bill, interesting, but we already knew this. This is literally one of the last things you said to Gideon the first time you met him in Dreamscapers, so what about something new this time? Well, how about the fact that the human body straight up sucks, and a person's final form that they evolve into is actually Larry King? Okay, I mean, yeah, human body sucking, that makes it... Wait, hold on, what was that last part? Now, love. That's an interesting topic. He explains that love is a trick, and he doesn't really care for it. But after we, the reader, basically beg him, or more likely Bill believes we are begging him, he agrees to give us some dating advice. Now, of course, it's horrible, and a lot of the stuff he says is borderline or straight up illegal, but there is a very interesting detail right at the end of that section. There is a section with redacted text here where it says, my exes. And Bill swears, no, there's nothing like that in my life, but if there was, what was he writing before that got redacted out? To me, it seems like Bill actually had some kind of love in his life, before he went after Earth and targeted the Pines family like we all know and love him. After a brief few pages where Bill talks about, death and morality, in which he claims that he escaped being killed by Stan through invoking an ancient curse. Keep that in mind, because it is a big point of Gravity Falls lore that we will absolutely be circling back to towards the end of the video. He mentions the fact that they are parallel dimensions. He claims that he can see into almost any other dimension out there, and how there's infinite possibilities. The multiverse is more like, branching timelines in ways like that. He specifically points to, our protagonists, Dipper and Mabel, saying that the timeline that we saw in the show is the only one where they actually survived to see their 13th birthday. And he believes that the infinite versions of them out there that didn't make it would be pretty angry if they ever found out that there were versions of them out there that survived. And it may possibly not end well for our duo if these alternate versions find them. After some more random Bill facts about the world, including a couple of pages dedicated to silly straws. Yeah, no, I'm not making that part up either. And after giving an explanation that a cult is just another word for a toxic fandom, I feel a little bit called out there, Alex. Bill talks about the area where he's an actual expert in, and that is dreams. He goes into more detail about a few of the characters, but he starts with a few quick snippets of interesting things that he heard while peering into different characters' minds. And here's a few notable ones that I found. Big one with some lore implications is that Dipper overheard a fight between his parents, which implies that that's part of the reason why they were shipped off to Gravity Falls to live with Stan in the first place. So, it makes sense, but it also makes the whole framework of their summer trip that much darker, and why Dipper just did not care about it when he first arrived. Another interesting note is that Pacifica apparently is still visited by the lumberjack ghost at night, who we know, based on information from Journal 3, is actually an ancestor of Wendy's. And of course there's fun ones in there about the fact that Blubs and Derwin only ever dream about each other, which is not that surprising. Like I said, he talks in detail about a few of the other characters' minds that he's visited. He specifically mentions Dipper, who is unsurprisingly always thinking about times that he has failed or times that he has embarrassed himself. He just keeps reliving those moments over and over, including some questionable search history that Dipper has there. But Bill also claims to have beamed fake images of the author of the journals writing the journals, and it is a very clever callback to when Alex Hirsch himself made a fake leak of McGucket writing the journals, because each one of these fakes that Bill beamed into Dipper's mind looks very similar to the same format that Alex created there. That was a really fun nod there. Bill also says that visiting Mabel's mind was a mistake because he basically got stuck talking to the Dream Boy, High, Xyler, and Kraz the whole time. But then he also says that he tried to enter McGucket's mind, but the poor guy's mind was too destroyed even for Bill, and that Bill actually got physically hurt trying to enter his mind because of how much crazy stuff with just broken pieces were whizzing around in there, which, makes you feel even worse for McGucket than you already do. He's one of the most tragic characters in the show, and even Bill feels kind of bad for him at that point. Now, details about, the characters we know and love from Gravity Falls is interesting and all, but the real meaty lore of this book comes in Bill's own backstory. Now, granted, Bill is obviously a very unreliable narrator, but this is the most we've ever gotten about what his life was before he targeted the Pines family in Gravity Falls. So I'm at least willing to accept large chunks of it at face value, and we'll still have to read between the lines in some places. But anyway, Bill starts telling us about his backstory by talking about his childhood, including giving us a very easily memeable baby photo of himself that I am very proud that the fandom has immediately embraced as a really goofy thing that we can just put anywhere and draw anything with. It's honestly a great meme material. But Bill claims that he was a very beloved baby in his childhood. I'll take that one with a grain of salt for sure. But he also says that he had an ability that the other members of the second dimension did not have. He could see the third dimension. And, of course, being Bill, he wanted to share this with everyone in his dimension. And it gets glitchy and kind of redacted text lines at this point, but it basically sounds like that in Bill's grand plan to share the third dimension with his world, he ended up destroying his own dimension and everyone in it until he was the only survivor. Now, something interesting about this is, it's not exactly the same, obviously, because Bill is the one who directly caused the destruction of his home in this case, but I can't help but think of parallels to the Thanos book that was released that's kind of soft MCU canon. It's a thing where the book isn't canon to the movies, but the movies are canon to the book type of thing, where in it, Thanos presents his plan of, completely, fairly, randomly wiping out half the population, and his planet just goes into chaos, people start freaking out, he's banished from Titan, and in the end, his home is destroyed. Now, in that case, Thanos is not responsible directly, as far as we know, for the destruction of his home world. It was something that was just kind of an inevitable thing that happened, ironically, inevitable, but I can't help but draw the parallels there between Gravity Falls' own bad guy and the main villain of the Infinity Saga for the MCU. After his home was destroyed, Bill set out and ended up forming his own crew, the Henchmaniacs. Now, we've met most of them in the finale of Gravity Falls during the whole multi-part Weirdmageddon arc, and there are a few others that are mentioned that are mainly jokes, but there's one in particular that seems like there was something else going on there. And you can see right here that Bill has crossed out this one right here. It says, not important. Then you can kind of see a little bit through the picture here. It appears to be probably a female character wearing a hood with a bunch of eyes, more than 2 eyes. And the thing is, we've actually seen this character before in journal number 3. Because when Ford is going through and talking about all of his travels in other dimensions after he fell through the portal, he mentions that in one dimension, dimension 52, he met the Oracle. Seem familiar? Now, we don't know too much about the Oracle, but Ford does say that she seemed to have very detailed knowledge of Bill and was very eager to help him in his quest to defeat him. So it makes sense now seeing the Book of Bill that apparently the Oracle was once a part of Bill Cipher's gang. And my own personal theory here looking at it, I can't help but wonder, because I mentioned earlier in the book, Bill started to talk about the fact that he had some kind of an ex, but then he crossed out and said, no, there was no one like that. Kind of similar to how the Oracle was crossed out when he talked about his henchmaniacs. Now, that's a there's no really other connecting thread other than that, but it would be interesting if the Oracle was Bill's ex. It would also explain why she was so knowledgeable about Bill. She wasn't just another one of his flunkies. I think that would be an interesting detail. Again, that's just my personal theory, but I think that would be a cool way to enhance the Oracle as part of the story. But anyway, after introducing us to his crew, Bill talks a little bit about like some of the crazy adventures that they went on, all the different hijinks. But then he reveals that the Nightmare Realm, where he and his crew had set up shop and made their home, was actually unstable. The edge of reality was starting to close in on it, and that is why Bill went out in search of a new dimension. But turns out, Time Baby is the temporal guardian of our dimension. So Bill, being Bill, he eyed our dimension and reached out to Time Baby and wanting to make a deal, because that is how Bill always operates. It says, hey, you can help me, maybe I can help you, that kind of thing. Time Baby immediately rejected him, made him wanted by the Time Variance Authority, and led an army to the Nightmare Realm to take him down. But Bill was prepared for this, because he always has plans upon plans upon plans. There was a big battle, and eventually Time Baby is actually ejected out of the Nightmare Realm, and he crashes into Earth. And this is actually the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. It wasn't an actual asteroid, it was Time Baby. And that caused, the dinosaur extinction, and Time Baby ends up frozen in the ice after an ice age hits right after that. And this is a reference to a tiny little detail in one of the very first episodes of the show. If you go back to Irrational Treasure in Season 1, and they're looking at the document that talks about, the Northwest who didn't actually found Gravity Falls and how it was actually Quentin Tremblay, there is a little bit of extra text that goes by that mentions a time-controlling or time-consuming, I can't remember the exact words, but basically a giant baby frozen in the ice. It's kind of cool to see that right there as just a little nod to Time Baby actually ties into Bill's backstory. Now, Bill, he doesn't actually like our dimension. He calls planet Earth a disappointment ball, but he does want it because Earth sits right on top of dimensional instability and it's the perfect escape route for him and his henchmaniacs to get out of the Nightmare Realm and set up shop in a new home that is a little bit more stable this time. So, Bill started reaching out to the humans on Earth to see if he could find a way to get them to make a portal. This is the beginning of Bill's grand plot that eventually gets to Ford. He starts, though, still in Gravity Falls, but with a shaman of a local tribe there. And the shaman does first try to build portals for Bill out of redwood. They don't always go great. The first one that blew up caused the bottomless pit next to the Mystery Shack, and also it created rock that looks like a face rock. Because it turns out, that's a real face. One of the members of the tribe got turned into stone, at least his face, got turned into stone when the portal blew up. So that's what rock that looks like a face rock actually is. So it's a little bit more disturbing history on that one. But eventually, like Ford does later, the shaman gets a better idea of what Bill's intentions are. He burns the portals down, and he creates the prophecy. The Cipher wheel that people have been obsessing about since the intro first played for Gravity Falls. This was the shaman that first put that prophecy into writing. In fact, you can actually see a little bit here shining on the back of the book, the Cipher wheel, and with all the symbols on it. Of course, Bill's not in the middle, though. He's on the front of the book, because this is his party here. Bill didn't let that one shaman stop him, though. He tried again and again over the course of history. He tried with the ancient Egyptians, with the Aztecs, the residents of Easter Island, knights during the Dark Ages, the Puritans of New England, even America's founding fathers, which is, to explain why the Eye of Providence is on our currency. And his efforts, though, did eventually lead to some humans figuring out. I mean, this same triangle demon showing up to multiple people time and time again, some people are going to figure it out. And in 1901, some of these crazy people that Bill contacted met together and formed the Anti-Cipher Society. And, I'll make this clear. These people are lunatics, which is probably why Bill targeted them. But they actually knew Bill was out there, and they had wild ideas to try to stop him, from the simple stuff like, exorcisms and seances, to building these exosuits to stop Bill with random crap on there that they thought would be able to prevent him from possessing their minds and doing things, to even making these tonics that I feel are either poison or just alcohol, or honestly maybe both, and definitely weren't good to drink. But Bill messed with them a bit, but then he left them alone because he didn't really need them for anything, because they already caught wind of his plans, and the Anti-Cipher Society was shunned by everyone else for being crazy. Bill kept trying, though. As technology advanced, so did Bill's plans, but they started to kind of devolve at this point into more scams than actual indoctrination of trying to get people to follow Bill. And Bill was honestly ready to call it quits. He was getting ready to just, like, wipe out Earth, move on to a new dimension, try a plan B. But then, a summoning ritual was performed in Gravity Falls. Ford Pines had arrived, and he had opened the door for Bill to return to the valley once again. Now, like I said, I have read Journal 3 cover to cover many times, but this time, Bill actually has examples of missing pages that were not shown in the show and did not appear in the physical printed version. But it still documents some of Ford's time dealing with Bill, and it shows also why Ford had ripped those pages out, because he was embarrassed of them and the horrible things that he went through with Bill. But anyway, Ford, after, summoning Bill, says nothing happens until Bill visits him in a dream. It turns out this right here, not only was Ford's investigation of Gravity Falls at a roadblock, he was very, very lonely. He was just this weirdo in the woods. He even tried social interaction. He was awkward and nobody really trusted him, or even, honestly, some people were probably scared of him. But Bill was there, and he was a friend to Ford when he had none, and that is what Bill manipulated to get Ford to get on board with building the portal, and starting that up, bringing McGucket in, and working on the portal. And, of course, as we know, Ford saw no problem with this. He was thrilled to finally have progress on his investigation, but after one winter, where McGucket saved him from a Krampus monster, and Bill was nowhere to be seen during that whole thing, Ford started to wonder if his muse really had his best interests in mind. And he wasn't quite ready to give up yet, but that feeling of doubt continued to linger, especially after he had a dream. And in that dream, he was visited by Bill's previous targets, the previous people that Bill tried to make a deal with. They offer him a vague warning, but Ford couldn't quite figure it out, and he just didn't know what they were trying to tell him. So he continued with the project on the portal. That is, until, of course, the day that McGucket nearly fell into the portal, quit the project, and Ford started realizing what Bill was actually up to. Now, from the show, what we get at this point is after that happens, he goes to Stan for help because he has no one else to turn to. Turns out, he had a long and draining mental and physical battle with Bill when he's still trying to deal with it on his own. From, locking himself in a room with a retinal scanner that would detect if there was anything wrong with his eyes, because, Bill's possession does the weird things to your eyes, to, considering building a Bill-proof suit, kind of because he found some of the writings of the Anti-Cipher Society, and he thought, oh, maybe I can improve on this design and do something. He never ended up going with that route. And at one point, he even fought possessed zombies at the Valentino-owned cemetery, which, I have to say, I loved this part, because one, it looks like it was written in invisible ink the way it's formatted in the book, but also this part right here, he has a whole aim is getting better joke, so I'm thinking that it was Mr. Pines, the father of the twins, that originally had a joke like that, and both of the brothers ended up adopting it in their own way. I think it's a fun little detail there to show that, they may be very different, but they're still brothers, they're still twins, they have a lot of similarities because of how they're raised. But eventually, of course, Bill just would not give up. He kept sending the messages despite all of Ford's best efforts. Bill would leave sticky notes everywhere. At one point, he taped a snake into the journal to try to bite Ford. And another time, he actually possessed him while he was asleep and took video and pictures of illegal and embarrassing things that he did, dangerous things that he did, all night long. At one point, he had Ford wake up standing frozen on the roof of the shack. Bill was making clear, I'm not going anywhere, and I want you to finish this. And so that is when Ford eventually gave in and decided to give Stan a call, leading to what we saw in A Tale of Two Stans, where Ford fell into the portal and into Bill's nightmare realm. Finally, we have what is, in my opinion, the best part of the book for this last stretch. Not only because it ties things together like every good book does, it shines a completely different light on all the stuff we've been reading up to this point, and it even answers some of the biggest questions that Gravity Falls fans have had since the show ended almost a decade ago. So anyway, after revealing some of those lost pages of Journal 3, Bill comes back to writing the book directly to us and says, look, this whole time that you would read this book, I've been in your mind. And Bill claims that he's been going around in her mind, deleting a few things, clearing a few things up, reshuffling it around, reformatting, to make it easier for him to step in, because he has a deal for us. He wants us, the reader, to travel to Gravity Falls, find his statue in the woods, shake its hand, and then we'd swap places. Bill would take our body, and he would go find a portal and trigger Weirdmageddon 2, all while we claims it would be temporary, while we would temporarily take over his body in the afterlife, and we would just swap back after he triggered Weirdmageddon. This is the deal that he has for us. He claims that he would make us a king ruling with him, but of course, Bill can't share the spotlight. That wouldn't happen. But that is the deal he is offering us. And he just needs to know, are we in? To help him create a party that never ends with a host that never dies. We don't get a chance to take him up on that offer, though, because Ford comes back to writing directly to us, and he reveals the truth of this whole thing. See, at the beginning, he talked about how he found the book, and he was terrified of it. And rightfully so. I mean, it's a book from Bill, and it was infecting other books. That's pretty creepy. But then he said, like, after he locked himself in the lab for a while, unsure of what to do, like, whether he should tell the family, what he was going to tell the family, he went back up, and he found that they were already reading it. But none of them were affected by Bill. No one was possessed. No one was, like, leaning towards making a deal or anything like that. They were laughing. They were laughing at Bill because they saw through what he was doing and thought it was pathetic. And this is where how Ford describes what this book actually is and what Bill is. And I want to read it word for word because I think it is a brilliant description of what's going on. This isn't some dark Bible or a cursed gateway. It's the last pathetic gasp of a has-been who fears being forgotten. Bill isn't a god. He's a needy theater kid in search of a stage. Needy theater kid in search of a stage. I love that. I think that is brilliant. And it shows the truth of this book. This whole time, like the way it was presented and everything, and honestly part of the marketing was part of this, was, hey, this is Bill's side of the story. It's all of Bill's secrets. It's like, listen to Bill and get all of his stuff. But no, it's just another one of Bill's tricks. That's really all it is. And I love that, because it really shows that Bill is desperate. He doesn't have the power or control or influence that he had before Weirdmageddon, when Stanley defeated him. He is, by himself, desperately trying to find anyone to help him. And after Ford reveals this, he turns the pen over to the other members of the Pines family to give their thoughts on everything. First, Mabel basically writes to Bill directly, saying, hey, Bill, get over Ford. Move on. This isn't happening anymore. Just move on with it. But then she also says that if Bill ever threatens Dipper again, she will literally eat him like a tortilla chip. Which I believe her. But it also reminds me of that one like meme edit people that would often do with Marco's super awesome nachos from Star Versus, where they would edit the triangle food, as Star described it, to be actually Bill Cipher reaching out trying to make a deal. To be honest, that's what he's basically doing in this book, but Mabel would just eat that tortilla chip because she's done with him. After that, the pen is passed over to Dipper, who writes directly to the reader saying, hey, I get it. Monster hunting is fun, but just be careful that you don't become the monster yourself while you're on that hunt. And of course, Dipper also threatens to put Bill in the ground if he ever goes after Mabel. I really love these two. Like, the fact that they're standing up for each other like this is great to see, especially now that they're at the point of, Bill, we beat you. You lost. Just move on already. We're done. But then after that, Dipper hands the pen over to Stan, who is basically making it clear that he is forced to write this by Ford. And Stan says, as the con man, says, look, if a deal sounds too good to be true, it's because it probably is. Just don't listen to this guy. He's a con artist, and I would know. But then there's actually another detail right here, which I love, because it shows what we've already known. Stan is a lot smarter than people give him credit for. And people often forget that, but he points out a detail. If Bill really is living in some swanky afterlife that's actually a great place to be, which is part of what he's trying to convince us in this new deal, then why hasn't he been bragging about it the whole time? He mentioned in passing that he was in a great afterlife at the beginning of the book, but we know Bill. He's a braggart. He'd be talking about how great it was the whole time if this was actually the case. So where is he actually? Keep that in mind, because we're going to be getting to that answer really quick here at the end. Bill cuts back into the narration and basically admits, yeah, look, You can listen to them if you want, but I can make you a god if we work together. Please, just shake my hand and take this deal. Don't listen to the Pines family. But of course, knowing what we know, we as the reader decide not to take Bill up on his deal, and it begins to slowly fade and glitch away, and he once out calls Stan... Bill cuts back in here after the Pines family and says, Look. You can listen to them if you want, but if you take my deal, I can make you a god. Please, just shake my hand. Let's make this deal. But of course, we as the reader already know what's going on at this point, and we don't take Bill up on his deal. And at that point, he starts to glitch and fade away, and just like in Weirdmageddon, he knows who to blame for this, and he starts screaming out Stanley's name again. But that's not the end. That may be where Bill's story ended in the show, but that's not where it ends in the book. We are going to see what happens after Weirdmageddon, what happened to Bill after he got punched out of Stan's mind. And there is a little bit of a poem here that I'm going to read, and I really, really love it, so I'm going to go ahead and read it word for word here, and you can hear what happened to Bill after he was defeated. On the day Bill Cipher died, he used the trick he never tried. Shattered, broken, not yet dead, Cipher left the con man's head. A desperate plea, some panicked prayers, to meet the frilly guy upstairs. In a tank outside of space, the opposites met face to face. Just one shot to live again. He pled his case to his old friend. Look, from one god to another, who cares I tried to kill those brothers? They're all ants, it's all a game. Let's press restart and try again. I'm too cool and fun to die. Just give this angle one more try. The axe sighed in a knowing way. He'd expected this is what Bill'd say. You cannot regrow through denial. You'll have to face my hardest trial. See my program to the end. Then you may yet live again. Am I fighting demons? Eating ghosts? You're getting what you need the most. One way to absolve your crimes, to change your form, will take some time. Bill could not believe his luck. This salamander was a schmuck. Easier than he ever thought it. He faked remorse, the guppy bought it. In combat, Bill was undefeated. Whatever challenge, he could beat it. Bill shook the axe's hand with glee. How bad could these trials be? Well, you see, Bill, when we turn the page to see exactly what these trials are, they're not trials like combat trials. Because Bill is in therapy. No, really. It turns out Bill was actually in an institution outside of time called the Theraprism. It's there to rehabilitate multi-dimensional beings and things like that. So we see a message from one of the wards at the Theraprism basically saying, oh yeah, this patient he was breaking the rules by reaching out to you. He's been a troublesome one. He started a one-man riot on his first day here, but we still believe that we can get to him. And we're just going to keep trying, and eventually he can be reformed. Because it turns out what the Theraprism does, it takes these dimensional threats, reforms them, and then has them reincarnate into the world as like a little animal or an inanimate object, something like that. And so that's what they plan to do with Bill one day. But they're still getting there. He's obviously fighting the process, but they believe that they'll be able to get to him. But I also want to point out, on the page where it talks about some of the other patients in his ward, it also has the freaking creepy dog thing from Mabel's like smile dip trip, and it says maximum security recommended or required, or I think that's supposed to be recommended. It's the same thing that it says for Bill, so apparently this thing that Mabel saw in the first season is just as dangerous as Bill. So there's that. There's always something in Gravity Falls out there that's going to be something weird and dangerous. You can never escape that part of it. But even after all that information, we get one last chance to hear from Bill. And he says, look, I admit it. I'm not in the afterlife. I am in the Theraprism. But he also defies that he will ever be changed, that they're ever going to reform him, and he swears that he will get out. All he needs is one person to shake his hand, take him up on his deal, and let him out. And with that, he fades away once more, back into the statue, hidden somewhere in the woods. I'm going to be honest. At first, when I started reading this book, it really felt like it was just going to end up being one of Bill's insane ramblings, and that all those claims that this was going to be just dark and twisted, almost cultish. It was Alex Hirsch taking it a bit too far and writing things that Disney didn't let him, and just kind of becoming a little self-absorbed with it. I was worried about that when I started reading, because the first half of this book just feels like random Billness, and it got really, really weird in some places. But once it started turning to like Bill's backstory, I was like, okay, we're getting a little bit more info here. This book is a little bit better now. And then that ending, when Bill is kicked out of the picture and the Pines family step in and they say, this is what's going on. This is what Bill is actually doing. He is just desperately grabbing at straws. Silly straws, maybe, based on that one page. The whole thing changed. And I also, I should have, looking back on it, I should have expected the book was going to have some extra detail or something like that, considering how Journal 3 ended up being more than just a physical version of what we saw in the show. Journal 3 told, Ford's story in Gravity Falls. It told what happened between some of the episodes. It told a cohesive, overarching look at the Gravity Falls plotline from a different point of view. And that's what the Book of Bill ended up doing. I mean, it is, Bill's last desperate attempt to trick someone. But as a fan of the show, it is basically, this beautiful look at, here's the truth about Bill, and here's the answers you've been seeking for 10 years. Let's put a little bow on this story now, a bow tie maybe. Bill is done. And that's what I think this book really is doing. It's putting a capstone on the end of the Gravity Falls story, at least around Bill Cipher, and saying, this is what happened to him. All those theories that you had over the years of is he in the statue? Is he atomized and just having to reform? Is he still in Stan's mind and Stan is now part Bill? All those theories, which there were many of them over the years. Even Matt Pat covered them for a bit. It turns out Bill is just getting what he deserves. Some mental help. Which is a very fitting ending for him, honestly, after everything. It was satisfying what happened in the show, even if just imagine that he was killed off there. But somehow him having to go through what he considers torture of them trying to reform him over and over and over again, I think that's almost a more fitting thing. And the Book of Bill has solidified it as one of what I think is 4 main pieces of media that make up Gravity Falls' main story, that if you want the full story, you should read and watch all of it. Obviously the first one being the main show itself. Watch both seasons, that is the main story of Gravity Falls. But then you have Journal 3. Like I said, it tells the whole overarching story of the show and the stuff before from different points of view, from almost different perspectives on it, and it fills in some gaps and gives you a little bit of extra part at the end. Then you have the Lost Legends graphic novel, which I really, really loved. I loved all the extra bits with the characters. It is, I feel like, also a partial key story point because it has character development for things like Mabel, because I know some people had issues with that. And now you have the Book of Bill, which tells Bill's side of the story. Not only that, it fills in some of his backstory if you read between the lines and ignore him embellishing everything. But it also gives you a ending for Bill's story. There's no more guessing of where is Bill, what is going on, is he planning something? We know where Bill is. He's not a threat anymore. And I honestly love that, because it means that as much as I love this show, giving it an ending like that with the Book of Bill, I think is perfect. Because it means the story is truly over. Not only was it told largely in the 2 seasons that we got, the Book of Bill is basically saying, hey, here's that little extra bit that you've been digging for, and the story is done. Thank you, and goodbye. And I'm okay with that. I think this is a honestly beautiful ending to Gravity Falls, and it's right up there with Journal 3 for me for importance in the lore. It ended up being much better than I expected when I got to the end. So that was the Book of Bill. My conclusion, weird. You gotta get past the first half of it, but once you get into it, it's really, really good. And I didn't even cover the hundreds of ciphers and codes that are in this book. That is for someone else to cover. That is not my job here today. I'm mainly going over the summary of the book and my thoughts on it. If you want to look at the ciphers, I'm sure there are tons of videos talking about that and any other little secret details that might be in there, because Gravity Falls is always going to be a mystery, even with the show wrapped up. But that is going to do it for this video, this particular edition of Eabs Book Club. I promise next time I will finally get around to covering the Bendy books like I promised last time when I did my first video. I really want to talk about those, because those are really interesting and where they sit in canon and the characters and the way they're portrayed in there. I really want to talk about those books, so that'll be next time. And after that, I'm thinking I may eventually look up and read the Hello Neighbor books, because it turns out there's actually a bunch of those. I may have to split that into 2 different Eabs Book Club videos. But I've been getting into the series again a lot more lately thanks to the show Welcome to Raven Brooks, so I'll probably be covering that after the Bendy books. So be sure to stick around and look for that there. That's the video for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Please drop a like in the comment down below if you did. If you're subscribed, if you haven't already. See you all on the next one. Bye, guys!